the Senate Rules Committee to order. Friday, happy Valentine's Day to everybody. We've got 3 bills here today. I'm not sure we'll really get through House Bill 183. So I'm going to ask if you're on 183 when we get to it. If you're from out of town, if you traveled here, I want to hear your input if we have to carry it over. So we'll talk about that when we get to that bill, if we get to that bill. We got a whole bunch of rules, and we'll make sure we all agree to it, and we'll do it. So first bill, we need to do roll call first.
Senator Cooper?
Here.
Senator Jones? Here. Senator Nethercott?
Excused.
Senator Rothfuss?
Here.
Chairman Anderson?
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Oh, good. It's good to have a quorum. It's good. Okay, we'll start with House Bill 264. Is there anybody want to talk about 264? There is. Yes. Good. Introduce yourself and carry on.
Well, hello, everyone. Chairman Anderson and members of the committee. Happy Valentine's Day. I really hope that you love this bill. This is House Bill 264. It's central bank digital currencies prohibition. It's pretty straightforward. The first section.
Introduce yourself so
I'm
the
sorry.
public hears who you are.
I'm Representative Daniel Singh. I represent House District 61 right here in Cheyenne.
Good. Go ahead.
All right, Mr. Chairman. So the first part, there are 3 sections to this bill. The first section just very clearly states that no state agency shall accept or require payment in the form of a central bank digital currency for any government service or for the payment of any taxes or fees. And then no state agency shall use public funds to assist in any manner in the testing, adoption, or implementation of a central bank digital currency. And it defines a central bank digital currency as a digital medium of exchange, token, or monetary unit of the account issued directly by the federal or by the United States Federal Reserve System or any analogous federal agency. And state agency means the state of Wyoming or any of its branches, agencies, departments, boards, instrumentalities, or institutions. And then the next section goes through some findings that why a central bank digital currency would be a negative thing for our society, for the country that we live in, and because there isn't a central bank digital currency that's been issued by the Federal Reserve, this remains a state's right. And so this is our chance to get our voices heard before anything comes down the pike from Washington, D.C. That a central bank digital currency would establish a direct line between a person's financial activity and the government. It would easily prohibit the purchase of certain goods or limiting purchases by a person. It would reduce credit availability, and the centralization of financial data leads to increased surveillance and the loss of financial privacy. The collection of the data inherent to a central bank digital currency, providing the means of a government control of a person's financial activity. And then the legislature urges Congress to prohibit the establishment of a central bank digital currency through Congress's federal legislative authority. And then this would be sent from the Secretary of State to the President of the United States, the President of the Senate, and the Speaker of the House for the United States. So, and the third section is that it would become law immediately. For that, I stand for any questions.
Okay, any questions for Representative Singh? Any questions? Yes. Senator Rothfuss.
Thanks, Representative Singh. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Representative Singh, as this is structured, the one form of a CBDC that seemed to have some potential use that wasn't objected to strongly was actually institution to institution, state to state, the kind of large transfers of money between entities as opposed to the retail consumer level, which is really what most of this is objecting to, and there's a lot of concerns about. But this seems to preclude that as well. So you could imagine a circumstance where, and I think it's been discussed, large blocks of dollars being transferred, and you think back to, for example, during COVID, when the state of Wyoming was receiving large amounts of money, those are the types of transactions that I've heard discussed for having some type of CBDC. So I'm imagining a case where it's implemented, where you have that type of potential interaction, and the state of Wyoming can't accept the federal aid that would potentially be directed to it, because it says in the A paragraph, no state entity shall be able to accept it. I was wondering about that accept language specifically. No state agency shall accept or require. It seems that if we got rid of accept or, and then everything else is probably left exactly as it is, I think it might take care of that type of situation where you had a government to government type transfer. And I wanted to hear your thoughts on that, and whether that was something that had been discussed, the idea of the wholesaling of dollars between the US government and the state entity.
Senator Rothfuss, where are you referring to?
It's on page 2, A
Two?
paragraph.
Line 5.
Yeah, line 5, no state agency shall accept or require payment in the form of a central bank digital currency for any government service, or for the payment of any taxes or fees.
Okay.
And anyway, just a thought,
Representative?
Representative Singh.
Singh, would you like to address that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Senator Rothfuss. I understand that it would make things less clunky for our state in doing business with our state, and any entities that would be shifting over a central bank digital currency. But because it would require essentially an overhaul of our financial system to move to a specific central bank digital currency, until they do that, by keeping the shall accept, it keeps Wyoming's stance on a central bank digital currency really clear. So I would prefer to keep that in there, but that is at the discretion of this good committee.
Other questions?
And I guess
Senator Rothfuss.
the other point would be not allowing acceptance does preclude citizens that would want to utilize it if it were to come into existence from being able to use it and engage with the state. But it does sound like that's intentional and that you're comfortable with that. So I just wanted to check in on that.
Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. I'm good.
Did I understand you to say that we don't have a problem right now, but we're trying to head off a problem?
Mr. Chairman, so the United States does not have a central bank digital currency. This is a theoretical way of doing currency that is being tried with other countries, particularly countries that like to exercise control over how their citizens are able to spend money. So the biggest player in the game right now would be China. They are only able to pay for goods in stores with an app that controls how they're able to spend their money. It's all centrally located, and all of those transactions are they're recorded and monitored, and if someone is misbehaving in the eyes of their party, then that would prohibit them. The government then has the means to prohibit them from participating in their local economy. And by moving to, if we were to move to a central bank digital currency, that would open the door for that type of control for the citizens of Wyoming.
Okay. Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Singh, Section 2 is essentially a resolution rather than actually something that probably should be in legislation. In my opinion, do you agree, or is there a reason that we're having this resolution language in the bill itself?
Mr. Chairman?
He's waiting on you.
Oh, go ahead, Representative Singh.
Thank you,
Sorry.
Mr. Chairman. Well, the purpose of the second section is to just very clearly state the intent behind the legislation in 914-601. So I do see how it would read similar to a resolution, though.
Follow up?
No.
Okay, any other questions for Representative Singh? Hearing none, thank you, sir. Thank you for being with us. I should introduce the other legislators that are in the room. There's Representative Heiner is in the room, and I'm not sure about anybody else. Oh, who? Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you for being here. All right. Is there any other public agency? Is there any agency that'd like to speak on House Bill 264? Is there any public that'd like to speak on 264? No, and there's no one in Zoom that wants to speak on 264. So we'll close public comment. Okay. Committee, what's your pleasure?
Move the bill.
Moved and seconded by Cooper. Any discussion? Any discussion? Any amendments? Any changes?
Mr.
Yes, Senator Cooper.
Mr. Chairman, I would propose an amendment to delete section 2, all of it. If the bringer of the bill wanted to bring that back as a resolution, I would probably support it, but I don't find it really necessary to the bill. It doesn't add to the bill. So my motion would be to delete entirely section 2.
Delete entirely section 2 on page 3 and 4. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second it for discussion, Mr. Chairman. I do think that you've got the actual codified statute on page 2. And to the extent that you have that, you really don't need what is the equivalent of a resolution. A resolution is just a small shadow of real statute. I think Senator Cooper's right that just having it stand alone, working on the statute and saying that the state isn't going to honor CBDCs for transactions and that, the B provision, no state agencies shall use public funds to assist in any manner in the testing, adoption, or implementation of central bank digital currency is sufficient. You could probably take and add one more, I wonder if you could add one more paragraph to the statute that sort of captures section 2. Maybe we could think about that if this amendment passes, we could find a way to incorporate a little bit of that sentiment into the first part, and it would be more effective that way.
Any other discussion on the amendment?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, go ahead.
to add to what Senator Ross has just said, I think, maybe just a simple paragraph of findings but when we go clear back to the Secretary of State shall transmit copies of this section to the President, I can't imagine why that would be in the statute.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Why we would need to put that in the green books. Huh?
Yeah.
Other discussion? Other discussion? Other discussion? I think we can just voice vote on this amendment, can't we? So all in favor of the amendment to delete section 2 on page 3 and page 4, signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. That amendment carries. Any other amendments? Any other amendments?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Senator Cooper.
I liked Senator Roth's idea on page 2, line 5, to strike the words except or. I'd move that we strike those 2 words.
Second.
Moving seconded to eliminate except or, so it would read, no state agency shall require payment in the form of a central bank digital.
That's it.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the amendment, signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. That amendment passes, excuse me. Any other amendments? Other
Question
amendments?
on the bill.
Question on the bill, and we'll do a roll call on the bill. Please, Sue?
Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote for House Bill 264 as amended. Senator Cooper.
Aye.
Senator Jones. Senator Nethercott.
Excuse.
Senator Rothfuss.
Aye.
Chairman Anderson.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, you have 4 ayes and 1 excused.
That House Bill 264 snuck by the, snuck by the Senate committee. Thank you. Yep.
Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna run across the hall
Who's-
for another bill. real quick.
Who's gonna talk on this? If you leave,
Yeah. I'm leaving and, I'm not on the bill, so it's okay. Oh, who's gonna, on
yeah,
the floor, you mean?
yeah.
Well, Senator Ide's on it, but I'll hop on.
Okay,
idea.
we'll have Senator Ide do it.
All right, I'll be right back.
All right. We'll be anxiously awaiting. Next bill to come for us is House Bill 214, and we have somebody here to present it. All right. Huh? Oh, okay.
Good afternoon, Chairman Anderson and committee. Today I am presenting, excuse me, House Bill 214 for your favorable consideration.
Did you introduce yourself?
I'm sorry, I'm Representative Thayer.
Okay, good. All the public wants to know that, who you are.
Okay. This is a pretty straightforward bill. It's just amending. It's authorizing local governments to pay claims and demands through electronic payment. And this is a may, it's an option, it's just another tool in their toolbox. The bill amends statutes 15, cities and towns, and ordinance and statute 18 for counties. And if you walk through the bill on page 2, it really just adds the additional for electronic payments. All due diligence in the statutes stay the same on procedures and acceptance and all the sign-offs, so really it just very clean. In 2005, House Bill 104 passed to do direct deposits or electronic payments for payroll only. So this is just opening up. I think what's was brought to from my constituents and other counties is that checks are being intercepted in the mail and they're being washed, which is a form of, you can do it with your items that you have in your home, which is acetone or bleach, and they're just taking the check and they're washing them and they're changing the payee and the amount. And we in our county had one that was just recently washed for 20 times the amount. Yeah, so it is becoming higher fraud than a check. The Wyoming County Treasurers Association supports this bill and talked to quite a few treasurers, and systems are already in place to be able to do this, so it's not a burden on them. And the benefit is, there's so many special districts, or when they're paying their vendors, that they send them out and then they don't hear back, and then their warrants are out there and they're having to write them off. They don't know if they didn't receive them or if the payee was right. The treasurer out of Sweetwater County talked about that their system is set up that they know what's getting ACH'd or electronic payment in the morning. They have their lists, it's approved, and by the end of the day, they know if those warrants and checks have been paid. Also, Wyoming County Commissioners Association and WAM support this bill. On the other side of the coin, I talked to some local financial institutions and how they felt about this. And I know that at least in our local community, they're for this also, because the amount of time that they're spending trying to get these claims or get this money back for our municipalities is taking a lot of time away from their other customers. And so financial institutions are also for this. Higher fraud. Physical manipulation on checks is higher than fraud on the ACH payments. It's more susceptible to forgery, alterations, and theft. And then the cost, another question that came up when I presented this bill on the revenue side, is that it's less expensive. You're not the time, the human capital of writing a check and stamps and all that. This bill was approved unanimously 9-0 in revenue, and the House passed it unanimously 60-0 to 2 on excuse. So I stand for any questions.
Thank you. Representative Thayer, any questions? Any questions? Our question master is out, so I don't know if we'll have any questions. Would this speed up the payment by not
Yes.
having to mail a check to
Yep.
somebody and all that
There's
kind
a
of thing?
whole efficiency component to this. It saves money, it's more secure, so it's just a win-win-win.
Senator Cooper,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Thayer, it's been my experience that a lot of my vendors in business and most of my customers require payment by ACH. Is this what the municipalities are requiring or finding? Is it more people are requiring payment by ACH?
Chairman Anderson, Senator Cooper, that wasn't brought to me, but I would assume that that is happening across the board. I know that when I talk to our local treasurer, they're not going to set up like when they have people come in and help for elections. Those are 1 or 2 times a year. These are for those monthly ongoing pays or warrants, I should say. Great question, thank you.
anything else? Anything else? Anything else? Thank you, Representative Thayer, for your testimony. Any agencies like to talk on House Bill 214? Any agencies like to talk on it? Any legislators like to talk on it? Any public like to talk on it?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. I'm Bob McLaurin with WAM. We like this bill. We appreciate the representative bringing it forward. It'll definitely help the cities and towns and start using ACH. It's just the way of the world these days, so we strongly support the bill. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Bob? Any questions? Any questions?
Thank you, sir.
Having none, Bob, thank you for testifying. Anyone else in the public? Anyone else in the public like to testify? We don't have anyone on Zoom? We'll close public testimony. Committee, what's your pleasure? Moved and seconded. Any amendments? Would you like to amend a few things out? No? Okay.
One short comment.
Short comment, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to the 21st century.
Well, if you're done commenting, we'll do a roll call.
Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote for House Bill 214. Senator Cooper?
Aye.
Senator Jones? Senator Nethercott?
Excused.
Senator Rothfuss?
Excused.
Chairman Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, you have 3 ayes, 2 excused.
House Bill 214 snuck by the Senate Minerals Committee. Thank you. Thank you for presenting that. The next bill to come before us, we haven't heard much about it on our computers, so we'll probably have to have a lot of talk about it. House Bill 183. And Senator or Representative Heiner, are you presenting this bill?
I am, Mr.
Wow,
Chairman.
all right.
Mr. Chairman, it's a pleasure to be here and see what a well-oiled machine you have with this committee. Look how fast you've gone through these 2 bills.
Yeah,
I hope I don't slow things down with this bill.
I hope you don't do.
But there's obviously either a lot of people here to view your chairmanship or they want to talk on this bill, so I don't want to take up too much time.
All right,
But Mr. Chairman and committee members, thank you for this opportunity. I'm Scott Heiner from House District 18. This bill was brought to me from some of my constituents with the increased cost of electricity. Some of our ranchers were getting very concerned about their electricity rates going up, possibility of 15 to 20, 30% a year. And some of these ranchers with their irrigation equipment, it costs them a lot more money than I ever envisioned it cost to run that. So not to burden you with the explanation of net metering, because I'm sure you know a lot more than I do about this, But what it does is it distributes the generation over the utility. And the solar panels are on rooftops, and during the day, they generate sometimes in excess of power. It goes on to the utility to be utilized, and that's a symbiotic relationship. So during the heat of the day, when the utility has a larger load for air conditioning or things like that, the solar panels are putting some of that power onto their system. So their peak may be brought down a little bit. Their peak load is brought down because they're feeding that during the heat of the day, when the sun is out. And so it kind of levelizes that and helps the utility. And then at the end of every month, the meter is bidirectional, so the power can go on or off. And at the end of the month, then they read that. And if the customer has used more energy than what they've put onto the utility, they have to pay for that on normal rates. If they've used less energy and actually put some energy onto the utility, that shows up as a credit. Just the energy credit, not on base load or anything else, just the energy credit. And that carries month to month. At the end of the year, that's trued up, and any credits left on the utility then is paid out at the avoided cost for solar energy. So it's the cost that they would incur to go out and buy solar energy from some other supplier. So it's trued up every year like that. So there's no real profit, but there is that symbiotic relationship during the year, and then it's trued up at the end. So going into the bill real quickly, what this does, right now our statutes say that you can only have up to 25 kilowatts in solar, rooftop solar. That's adequate for a residential customer. In fact, it's more than enough. But for a small business or an airport or a school district or government entity, it's not worth it messing with. They need a little bit more. So what this does is it leaves that residential cap, but it raises the commercial or a government cap up to 200 kilowatts. Now, is that excessive? Other states like Utah and Oregon, they allow up to 2 megawatts or 2,000 kilowatts for a non-residential customer. And North Dakota allows up to 100 kilowatts for both residential and non-residential. So it's not unheard of to raise that up to a little bit higher for non-residential customers. We also aggregate meters. So let's say you have a school district that has multiple meters. You can put solar panels on your parking garage and be able to aggregate a few of those meters that are on the premise and actually go above the 200 kilowatts that way. So if you are a government entity, let's say you're a municipality and you have a few meters in that same location, you may be able to put some rooftop solar on that's a little bit larger and defray some of the costs of monthly electricity. Now, what's the benefit to the utility? It provides more resiliency with generation coming from multiple sources rather than one central power plant or being transported into the area across these very expensive transmission lines. So it's very unlikely that all of these solar panels would go down at the same time, so it makes it more resilient. The other thing that is beneficial, Senator Jones is very familiar with the solar farm that's in our area, in our district. It encumbers the wildlife. When they built that a number of years ago, it caused a great deal of consternation for the impacts on the wildlife, and it encumbers our land. What a better place to put solar panels than on rooftop, where it's out of sight, out of mind, and it creates a value. Why is this important to small businesses and ranchers? The Inflation Reduction Act that was passed provides $2 billion to help agriculture and small business owners to pay for infrastructure for renewable energy systems. And so that would help a lot of the small business owners here in this state. So One other key point, we added an amendment in the House to help the utilities as they deal with this larger load. There was concern it might be putting a bigger load on as they deal with this. And so on page 3, lines 6 through 9, we added an amendment that allows them to charge an higher monthly fee for these larger self-generators. But it has to be approved by the commission. So that takes a little bit of the pressure off of them, their concerns, by allowing them to have a higher base fee for customer generators. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for any questions, and if I don't know them, I'll make them up.
All right, we'll believe you. I have a question. Where does it say, I see it says on page 1 that providing for the aggregation of net metering systems, but where do we say it in the bill?
It's on Romanet number 5, or 4, Romanet number 4. And I don't have the engrossed version. Mine's on page 3, Romanet number 4. It says, shall upon request from a
Okay,
customer
with one or more
aggregate
designated
an additional
meters.
meter that is physically attached. And there's some criteria there.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
look, one of these just magically appeared out of the sky. I have an engrossed version. So there's some criteria for aggregation. They have to be on the customer generator's premises. They have to be solely for the customer generator's use. Those meters that you aggregate, they have to be on the same rate schedule, so you can't have three-phase power here and single-phase power here. They all have to be same, and they have to be all served from the same primary feeder.
But Representative, I don't see where it limits it to 3. I know I've heard they could have up to 3, but I don't see
No,
that
there,
we're saying that.
excuse me, Mr. Chairman, there is no limit, no. These are the only limits, that they have to be on the same premise. So if you have like a municipality that may have buildings all over town, they have to be in the same place. So
Or on your ranch,
if you have a ranch
you
with
have 3 or 4, 5 pivots.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. If you have 3 or 4 or 5 pivots, you've got a pump, you've got the meter for the pivot itself, so you can aggregate those if they're in the same location.
Okay. Other questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Representative Heiner, you were talking about rooftop. This is not specifically just for rooftop generation. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Cooper, no, it's alternative energy, so wind power would be included in that.
Oh. Oh. Okay, yes. Senator Jones.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Heiner, so why just businesses? Why aren't you changing the amount for the residents?
Go ahead.
Chairman
Representative Heiner.
Anderson.
Tell us something.
Chairman Anderson, Senator Jones. So it's broken up as residential and non-residential. So it could be businesses, it could be government, it could be anything that's non-residential would then have the higher ceiling of 200. So you're either residential or you're everything else. So everything else includes the 200 rate.
But,
Follow up.
oh, go ahead.
But my question is, but you're only doing non-residential, right? So that was my question, is why aren't you changing it a little bit to help the residents? Are they not in need of having that raised, or what is the reason by only doing non-residential?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Jones, looking at there's only about 120 rooftop solar in Wyoming. It's 0.6% as a state, very small amount. And as a resident, 25 kilowatts is pretty big. None of them have asked that they need more than 25 kilowatts. It's small businesses that really need that. So will it help a residential customer? Probably not, to have that raised up, because that originally when the net metering was instigated, it was to provide enough up there so it wouldn't be in the way at 25 kilowatts.
help me to understand this then, Representative Heiner. I'm understanding that we've got 25 kilowatts for residential and 200 for non-residential, but we don't limit the residential to just one meter, do we? Can he take 3 meters if he wants 75 kilowatts?
Mr. Chairman, that's a very good question. I got to look at the bill.
It looks to me like he can.
It looks, I think you are correct, that if you have a home with multiple meters, you've either got a large home, but yes, you should be able to aggregate your meters as long as they're on the same rate base and they're served from the same feeder. So yes, if you have multiple meters at your house, you should be able to aggregate them together too.
Yeah, but you couldn't have anything over 25 for the residential. So if you had 3, you'd all have 3 25 kilowatt.
Mr. Chairman, I will have to defer to someone with more intelligence than myself, but that, I'm not sure. Someone behind me, I'll phone a friend.
Okay, okay, we'll let you phone a friend. Any other questions for Representative Heiner? Any other questions? Hearing none, thank you for
Thank you, Mr.
introducing
Chairman.
this good bill for us. Any agencies like to speak on this? Oh, then we have agencies. Please identify yourself and proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris Petrie, I'm Deputy Chairman at the Wyoming Public Service Commission. I'm here with John Burbridge, our Chief Counsel, who's at the table with me, and also in the room is Commissioner Mike Robinson. So we're been aware of this bill for some time. As I've explained before, the commission's concerns here are that we have just and reasonable rates and that we have safe service. There's no net metering philosophy here that comes into play with the commission's view of a bill like this. But we can answer a few questions. First, though, as already discussed, the provision that was inserted as an amendment that allows for potentially an additional monthly charge different from a non-net metering customer that was added here alleviates some concern about making sure we have the ability to set just and reasonable rates. Some utilities, because of their rate structure and the way that their rates work, might have fair rates problems. And when we say just and reasonable rates, we mean that the rates assign the responsibility to pay to whoever's causing the cost on the system. And so with that amendment, that creates a mechanism with these larger net metering systems so that the utility could propose or the commission could require a situation where there was perhaps a subsidy occurring because of the net metering installation and the way that the rate structure is arranged. It provides a means of curing that if necessary. All the utilities have a little bit different rate structure. They're not all necessarily going to be the same.
And Mr. Chair, what amendment are you talking about? Are you talking about on page 2, line 6 through 8, or which one are?
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
Mr.
it's
Chairman,
engrossed. I'm sorry.
I'm talking about the portion of the bill on it's on page 3 of the engrossed copy. And it's line 6 through 9.
You're talking about this one.
Yeah, he's talking about.
Yeah. Unless a customer generates operating a net metering system over 25
Yeah.
kilowatts, the
Yeah.
commission approves the fee or charge.
Yeah.
So there are existing provisions in the net metering statutes that address safety. We don't see any problem there. And we see the bill as it sits as providing a mechanism to cure, if necessary, any rate design or rate application issues to make sure that we've got just and reasonable rates, meaning cost causer pays the cost. A couple things that I can address. Mr. Chairman, there's a question about residential customers and the size limitation of 25 kW on that. It's sort of my working understanding that about 5 kW, 5 kilowatts, or 1/5 of what is allowed currently is what a typical residential customer would need to offset their own use. So usually thinking about somewhere in the 750, 800-ish kilowatt hours a month. And so 5 kW at about a 30% capacity factor would give you about 1,000 kilowatt hours. So it's not typically necessary, and I guess there's no such thing maybe as an average customer, but anyway, average customer is about 750-ish, 750 kW. So there's quite a bit of room for the typical customer. Not to say that 25 kW is satisfying for every residential customer, but most of the time, that's fine. As far as the kind of generation that's allowed under the net metering statutes, that's solar, wind, biogas, if you've got, agricultural operation or something. I don't believe we have any of those operating in the state, but that's potentially allowed, and hydroelectric. So you could have small hydroelectric generation, and that fits under the renewable alternative energy sources that are allowed under net metering. By far, most of them are in fact photovoltaic solar panels.
But you think we have the possibility of hydroelectric also for residential use?
It's been done other places,
great.
certainly, there are micro hydroelectric generators and small ones, and there are a couple of qualifying facilities in the state at least that I believe one of them at least operates on irrigation ditch up in Park County.
Oh, I'll be darned.
So there are some of those, they're not, those aren't net meters, those are another category, qualifying facility under the Public Utility Regulatory Policy Act of 1978, the PURPA. But yeah,
They're used right there on the premises. They're not hooked into the system then.
no, they're attached to the grid.
Oh,
So they're qualifying facilities, just like some of the wind farms that are merchants. They're not owned by the utility. The federal law says they're entitled to sell their power at avoided cost to whoever the grid operator or utility is in the area.
okay.
Mr. Chairman, you can just run your shower and then kind of have a fan below it. It's gonna work for you. Do that.
That might work. One last thing, and this has come up before. Everybody in Wyoming is entitled to go off the grid if they want. You could, there's no prohibitions. I've heard some misunderstanding on that elsewhere, but everybody can go off the grid. But the point of net metering is that you remain connected to the grid. The power's there when you want. You offset your usage. That's the primary purpose of it. If you happen to produce more than you use yourself, then it's purchased one way or another by the utility from you. Generally, that's at avoided cost, which is a fairly deep discount from the value of the retail credits that you get by offsetting your own use.
But this really would be considered off the grid.
No,
Yeah,
no.
these guys are on the grid.
This is what we're talking about here. Net metering is you're netting your usage against your production, and you remain attached to the grid, so you get all the advantages of that. And that's why you still pay a monthly charge regardless of your success offsetting your usage, because all that equipment, the infrastructure has to be there, it has to be paid for, it has to be maintained. And so you have to make a contribution to that in order for the rates to be just and reasonable.
That it?
Ready for questions?
That it,
Mr.
Chris? You ready
Chairman?
for questions? We've got questions, I bet. We've got questions. Yes, Senator Jones.
Mr. Chairman, is there any way to determine how many businesses could benefit if we pass this bill?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Jones, I don't think we really have an idea there. There are a lot of variables. You have to have some kind of a facility at the premises that can accommodate some kind of generation. If you happen to have a nice waterfall in the courtyard at your business, it might be magical. Some businesses would have no real opportunity to do this because of the physical structure that they're operating in. I don't really have any idea. When this bill was discussed in the other chamber, in front of the other committee, there were examples of ranch operations, hay barn roofs for a ranch where they were using power for irrigation. And so it's a lot of variables, hard to say.
Follow up, Jones? No? Yes, Chris. Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the discussion on page 2 between the new language, well, it basically creates a residential use meter of 25 kilowatts and then 200 for non-residential use. How would you characterize residential versus non-residential? Do we already have similar distinctions in terms of art and statute for residential versus non-residential?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Rothfuss, my understanding of what's meant here is that this would mesh with utility rate schedules, rate classes. And so all of the utilities, I believe, have a class that is primarily residential. Some of them might be a little bit loose. You might have some co-op that's got the same rates for a stock pump as they do for a household. But generally, residential users are going to be in a particular rate class. And so I think that's a ready understanding from our point of view that
Okay.
that's where we would get the definition, or that's where we would get our understanding of what's meant here by residential use.
That was, Mr. Chairman, and I was kind of wondering what classifies that. Is there anything that limits a residential use to 25 kilowatts? And I realize that that's rational. I'm just asking, and there's obviously no upper limit on what you would call non-residential use in other contexts, but we have 200 here, and I was trying to understand if there was any link to existing policy, rules, statute for these values, why they're selected that way.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Rothfuss, as far as I know, this 25 kW cap on net metering installation size has been here the whole time. And as I said, it's it's probably 5 times sufficient for what a typical residential customer uses. That's the statutory limit at the moment for everything. And so non-residential, those are going to tend to be larger customers who have higher energy consumption and often larger facilities, perhaps more capacity to do this anyway. 25 kW is a pretty good sized installation for a residential.
Okay, thank you.
Not to say that there aren't any.
Sure.
People have them.
So in their classifications, the utilities classifications, there'd be a lot of different non-residential. There'd be ag, there'd be businesses, there'd be other things. Residential probably is pretty limited to to some kind of households or something, I suppose. Is that correct? Is it correct that they would have multiple non-residential applications?
Mr. Chairman, that is correct. You know, for example, Rocky Mountain Power has a number of other schedules designed for different groups of customers with similar characteristics. So you get into general service categories, different sizes of general service customers, large industrial customers, transmission voltage customers, and I'm not sure that every utility in the state has multiple non-residential classes, but I believe they do. And you know, they're broken up because customers with different characteristics have different cost characteristics. And so in order to make the rates just and reasonable, that has to be done, and it is done.
So this would apply to all electric utilities in the state, not just the profit ones, but the REAs and that kind of thing too.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. I think this applies to everything except municipal electric utilities within their own boundaries. So to the extent, and they do, provide electric service outside of town in several cases, where they're operating outside of town, Title 37, the statutes that the commission operates under apply to them.
Okay. Other questions for
Chairman,
Chris?
Director, I believe we have, what, 4 or 5 of those municipal providers, is that correct, in the state?
Mr. Chairman, there are several, there might be 6 or 7. There's Cody, Gillette, Lingle, Lusk, Torrington, probably, there's probably a couple that I'm forgetting off the top of my head, but not all of them provide service outside of town. Torrington certainly does. Cody, as it's expanded, has typically taken over Rocky Mountain Power's equipment as they've expanded the town's footprint.
Other questions? Other questions? Other questions for the agency? Hearing none. Thanks for your testimony, John. And Chris. Any other agencies like to speak on House Bill 183? Any other agencies? Any other agencies? Any other legislators like to speak on House Bill 183? I know there isn't any public that wants to speak on it.
Maybe one.
Maybe one. Any public like to speak on House Bill 183? Come on. Come on up here. I know you want to talk to us. Give us your name and give us your story.
I'm Travis Spears. I'm with the Electric and Solar Specialist here in town. I'm actually a local licensed electrical contractor that's also doing a lot of solar throughout the state of Wyoming. We're definitely in support of this bill. We do find that there's a lot of good things in this bill. I think there's also some open-ended questions too that you guys are kind of touching on as far as this, how it kind of maybe could help residentials as well too. We do have a lot of customers that are residential, and on average, I would say our size of system that we're installing for the average home is between 7 and 10 kilowatts. So the 5 kilowatt or 5 times the size for a 25 kilowatt system, that's not quite accurate, at least what we see. The 25 kilowatt system though does cover probably 99% of the customers and stuff that we do deal with. Now, when we talk about the aggregation of the meters though, I don't think I saw it in the bill where it is encompassing of residential and the commercial 200 kilowatt cap. I think it would be beneficial to add that to where the aggregation of the meters is for both sides of it. We have a lot of customers, especially here in town, that have a pole barn or something that's just not on the same side as where their original utility drop is, that it made more sense economically to have a second meter drop over on that side. So instead of trying to aggregate or combine those meters and relieve the one and then go solar. The aggregation of those meters would make sense, that we could put the solar system essentially on the shop if it's south facing, instead of putting it on the house and having to worry about offsetting both sides. I think it would be, the aggregation side of it would be beneficial on both sides.
You can't do that now?
So right now, you would actually have to install two separate systems. You have to install one system that offsets the meter at the house, and you have to install a separate system that would offset the meter at the shop. So you could, at that point, put in up to 50 kilowatts of solar on that property. But that still wouldn't make sense. When the average home is only using maybe 7 to 10 kilowatt system that would offset them at 100%, overbuilding the system is not financially smart. What you get paid back at the filed avoided cost rate does not help you with your return on investment of what you're trying to accomplish. It's not smart. And we don't propose for that. We don't advise for that. Making money off of these systems has never been the ideal thing. The idea is to control what your cost is of the system itself, or your operating cost, especially like as the ranchers and stuff that we deal with. We have one customer who has 5 meters on their property. They've installed 5 25 kilowatt systems. This original plan for the system was installed by a solar contractor that didn't quite understand the way our net metering agreements work. They have one building that exceeds the 25 kilowatt usage. And so they are not covering their bills with the solar system that they have. And then their house, which is using significantly less than 25 kilowatts, it's covering their usage 100% and then some. But what they're getting paid back on is not helping offset the usage of the system that is not covering their 25 kilowatt. The idea of this bill being able to allow local small businesses to install solar on their property, I think is also a big thing. We're not littering our skylines with additional wind turbines that are corporately owned, that are blinking red lights in the distance at nighttime. We're utilizing the existing real estate right here in, say, Cheyenne, that we're able to put say a 200 kilowatt system on a business like Terrell Doyle Chevrolet, or Terrell Chevrolet now. Their usage, we've sized out for them a 100 kilowatt system at that time, which was a cap that we were allowed to do by the utility company, which then became a buy all sell all, was only going to offset their bill by about 40%. So if we were to do a 200 kilowatt system that this bill would allow, would give them an 80% offset of their usage. It's still not to 100%, but at that point, we're also alleviating that demand on the solar, or on the electrical grid, that we can send that power somewhere else. Somebody else can use it. Now, we have 11 more data centers that are coming into the city of Cheyenne, or at least into Laramie County. Where are we going to get all that power from if we're scared now how we're going to power it up? If we're able to install these small power production systems to help offset that usage, it's definitely a benefit. But on top of it, we're utilizing the existing real estate to make the power from the sun that's hitting right here in Laramie County, and we're using that power right here in Laramie County. We're not sending this power to another state. We're not selling it outside. We're using it here. I think I kind of touched base on everything I was wanting to touch base on. I guess we did talk about the aggregation, if we could do that for both residential and the commercial side. The other thing I think I want to touch base on too is the definition of your 25 kilowatt cap and the 200 kilowatt cap. It says that it is the generational capacity of that system. Now, the generational capacity of that system should be, in my view, based on the AC side of that system. We can't connect the DC power that comes off of a solar system to an AC grid. So I think that we need to define that in the definitions of net metering, that the 25 kilowatt is based off of the AC generational capacity. This is something that would also benefit, say, stores like Target, Walmart, Sam's, that could put in if they can't put it on the roof because of all of their skylights and stuff that help illuminate their buildings and stuff during the day, they could put it as a covered parking patio out in the parking lot. We have a lot of hail and stuff that comes in through here. We have a lot of snow that comes in through here, but that would eliminate, at least you would have some covered parking spaces, so when you're putting your groceries and stuff in your car, you're not getting dumped on, you're not getting rained on, you're not getting snowed on. There's so many different applications with this that it would work out, especially with the aggregation of the meters as well too. Now we can put a meter on the parking structures instead of having to try and bring power from the building that's already utilizing their grid access power. They're able to do another grid access meter and then supply back through that with the aggregation of still offsetting power that's being used at the building. So there's a lot of good things that are coming from this. And I think this will help not just offset or help the buildings control their operating costs, but it's going to encourage more and more jobs that are good paying, that are energy sector jobs all over the entire state of Wyoming. And these aren't jobs that are going in by people that are not skilled. All of our guys are going through a licensed college accredited apprenticeship program through the state of Wyoming. They can go anywhere they want and have a job, and we're producing those professionals right here in Wyoming. If we have something that drops out in the other part of the energy sector, we can look at doing cross-training and put them into another job. So we're not losing businesses closing down. We're not having kids leaving their school districts before school's even out because there's no work in the area. There's plentiful work, and it's all electrical work. We can absolutely look at adding additional stuff there.
I think you eclipsed our capacity to learn. What was your first name?
Travis Spears. I'm sorry, Travis, yes.
Travis, yes. Any questions for Travis?
One,
What? Senator Cooper, go ahead.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Travis, would you, without this bill, is there anything that precludes these businesses from going ahead and doing the things that you were just talking about?
Yes, right now, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Chairman, Senator.
Go ahead, Travis.
Without having this bill, we are limited to the 25 kilowatt cap. So that would literally, on the majority of the businesses stuff that we talk to, they would, the 25 kilowatt, it's just not enough production to help them offset what usage that they would see to make it even make any sort of financial sense. The larger the system we go, the cheaper it is on install. Our engineering rates and fees and stuff across, say, 4 panels is the same as it is across 190 panels. So the smaller the system, the higher the cost per, call it a watt, as it would be. So, yes.
Follow up?
Yes.
I understand what you're saying there, sir, but that's only for net metering. That's not, still wouldn't preclude them from going ahead and building a solar system for whatever use they may have, as long as it wasn't net metering. Is that correct?
I'm sorry,
go
Chairman,
ahead.
Senator Cooper, I don't believe that the utility companies will allow you to go above the 25 kilowatt cap. There's a few that will allow you to, but that 25 kilowatt cap, I mean, you could build those parking structures and stuff, but I don't think you're going to get the benefit or the net metering. They won't even allow you to install a system that is above the 25 kilowatt capacity according to the current net metering law, because it says 25 kilowatt capacity on the premises.
But I think what we're saying is if it isn't connected to the grid, if it isn't in net metering, you can put any capacity in you want, can't you?
Chairman, Senator, I'm not 100% sure that you can.
Oh.
I've had utility companies absolutely tell customers that they cannot install something larger than 25 kilowatts. And at that point of contention, it was, well, is it on the DC side or the AC side? But when the net metering definitions call for generational capacity, I think that's one thing that would clean it up. We can't connect DC power to the AC grid, so I think we do need to have that kind of lined out.
Mr. Chairman,
But
Yeah. Senator Cooper.
so you have never installed anything larger than 25 kilowatts?
currently, no, we have not. We are under contract right now for one that is larger because we do have one utility company that will allow us to go above 25 kilowatts to 100 kilowatts. That is a buy all, sell all. So we haven't installed anything larger than 25 kilowatts in the state of Wyoming, but we have helped procure, engineer, and install 3.8 megawatts worth of power in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Jeez, very many.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions? Other questions for Travis? Other questions? Other questions? Hearing none. Thank you, Travis.
Thank you,
Thanks for
guys.
being here. Thanks for educating us a little bit. Yes, sir. State your name and tell us your story.
My name is Jason Bloomberg. I am a resident locally just outside the city limits of Cheyenne. I've lived here since 2001. I'm a physician and have been involved with residential renewable energy systems since the 1980s and electric vehicles since 2007. My home is grid tied and has a larger than average generational system because it is all electric, and as are the vehicles that I drive. Our total capacity is about 18 kilowatts of rated power production at maximum efficiency. And we generate roughly 33,000 kilowatt hours per year and use about 28 to 30 kilowatt hours per year of our own consumption. We're essentially grid neutral about 86% of the year. This is with a limit of a 25 kilowatt system because it is a house. Now, I could have multiple meters, but I get a grid access fee of $44, soon to be $48 per month for each meter. And as you can imagine, that quickly starts chewing into your ability to offset your costs. I would like to be able to contribute a donation to our local synagogue so that they could have a reduction in their electric bill, because they're costing about $1,000 a month for that place of worship in electricity. And under the present system, there's no way to do that because you'd have to have separate services. They actually have a 400 amp service because it's a large building with big electrical loads. And while 200 amps wouldn't fully offset it, it would offset substantial portions of the load, far more than a 25 kilowatt system could do. One of the things that we deal with is trying to deal with misunderstandings and misinformation about shifting costs to non-renewable energy ratepayers. And keep in mind that people who are generating power with solar panels are doing it largely during the peak hours of when electricity is most expensive for utilities to acquire. And they're drawing back when the cost is low. When you factor these in all together, even with our system, basically the utility is making about just under 8 cents per kilowatt hour. In other words, I'm subsidizing my neighbor's rates when you really do the math, and I have a spreadsheet that I've been tracking this with. I have power generation from solar, from wind, and I have battery storage because my personal goal is to limit my drawing of power from the grid as much as possible. I could not go off-grid completely, although my prior home was off-grid, with the way that we are living right now, largely because the electric vehicles use so much electricity. The cost of having batteries, if you want to, Senator Cooper asked about, well, could you just be off-grid? To give you an idea, I have 135 kilowatt hours of battery storage. So when I'm generating excess power, more than what my house and my cars use, it goes into those batteries. It also serves as a backup if the grid goes down. But when I have the batteries full and I'm generating power, then it goes out to the grid and I'm banking it. And at the end of the year, come January, and I just got my January bill, the utility credits me 1.6 cents per kilowatt hour. They convert it to cash, and then that's applied against my monthly bill. Well, you can imagine that there's not a lot of bang for your buck at 1.6 cents per kilowatt hour. So the ideal is to try to offset what you are using. And that's what I would like to do for the house of worship I want to help support here in Cheyenne. And that's why I'm asking you to approve this bill so that people, whether they're in business or they want to support nonprofit organizations, so that they can reduce some of their overhead and apply the funds they have to their nonprofit efforts, make that more available to them. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions that you might have for me, because I have experience with living with this technology.
So Jason, the 200 kilowatt non-residential would be what you'd use for the synagogue?
Yes.
Or would you use two of them?
Well, since they allow aggregation, I suppose they could do that, but the cost of changing services, Senator Jones asked about the 25 kilowatt limit. Most homes have in Wyoming, older homes especially had somewhere between 100 amp or maximum 200 amp service. And that 25 kilowatts is roughly 100 amp service. And so it fit with the typical residential homeowner. Nobody really wants to be a utility. As I explained, because, you know, you get so little back when you are producing and converting to cash, it's not worth doing. I have a 200 amp service, and I can still balance things out with a very high electrical usage home. So while we have a 400 amp service at the synagogue, it doesn't mean that we're always drawing 400 amps. It means that's a maximum capacity.
Yeah.
So I would have a professional like Travis or someone else here in Wyoming engineer the system. I would like to point out that my system, when you add up all the costs of the wind power, we have 4 residential scale wind turbines, and we have solar and we have batteries, you know, that's just slightly under $500,000 investment that has been put forth employing people here in Wyoming, because all of the installation work and all of the design work was done by Wyoming-based alternative energy companies.
Other questions for Jason? Other questions for Jason? Hearing none, thank you, Jason. We
Thank you
appreciate
for your
your
consideration.
information. Anyone else in the public like to speak on House Bill 183? Anyone else in the public? Yes.
Good afternoon, General Committee. This is the first time I've spoke before your committee. My name is Dick Merklin. I represent the Wyoming Solar Coalition. We have close to 400 members in the coalition spread around the state. I just want to say as a general thing, because Travis and Dr. Bloomberg covered it pretty well. This is the first bill that I have seen since I started coming to net metering meetings in 2019. This is the first bill that's worth anything. Quite literally.
Wow.
Every other one has been shot down since 2019 because they were worthless bills. This bill has merit to it, and this coalition supports it fully. Travis and the doctor talked about all the technical things that I'm not wise enough to talk about. I'm here representing people that have systems on their roof for the most part. I have a few that have ground arrays. And it's a good bill. It needs to go forward. It needs to be passed as soon as possible.
Okay, Jake, all right. Any questions? Any questions for the association? Hearing none, thank you very much for coming in and complimenting our bill.
Thank you. It's about time. I'll support anything that's worth supporting, but none of the ones in the past.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else? We have a cutoff. I'm thinking about 5 minutes or so, and so we need to get done with in-house if we can. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll make this quick. My name's Natalie Johansson. I represent the Powder River Basin Resource Council. We have about 1,500 members throughout Wyoming. We continue to support House Bill 183. We have a few concerns about it that my members have brought to me, but overall, we think this bill deserves your support. Overall, this bill maintains the important provisions like increasing the cap aggregate meters. This is going to help towns. This is going to help businesses, agricultural. The reservations come from the PSC fees and oversight, but overall, we think that's a compromise that we're willing to make. But we urge you to vote yes on this bill. That's all I have.
Oh, all right, thank you. Thank you, Haley. Any questions for Haley? Any questions? Any questions? Hearing none. I'm going to take one more from the public here, and then we're going to have to move this to next Wednesday. Go ahead. You're the one.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Bruce Acey. Up here today on behalf of MD Resources in opposition to the bill. We think it goes the wrong way. You've had another bill in front of you earlier that was defeated, SF 111, that tried to do away with subsidies. That was defeated. This bill obviously goes the other way in trying to encourage solar production or alternative energy production. We appreciate that and appreciate the effort, but our concern is primarily with the idea of subsidization and the possibility of subsidization of other customers. There was a question asked with respect to, are there installations that are in excess of 25 kilowatts at this time? I can tell you that in MDU's system, which serves Sheridan and Buffalo, there are in fact residential systems that are in excess of 25 kilowatts. So they are there, and an individual can build a system as much as they want, but the subsidization that is associated with the existing law only goes to the 25 kilowatts. We like one thing in the bill, which goes to the idea that when you get to the true-up, it tries to prevent a subsidization by allowing the true-up only at the avoided cost. And that's important because what we're trying to do is to make sure that costs such as transmission, distribution, administrative fees, that these, which relate to the retail rate, aren't allowed so that they go for the true-up and benefit the generator to the expense of other customers. Because of that, and because of that possibility, we do stand in opposition to the bill. Thank you.
Any questions for Bruce? Any questions for Bruce? Any questions for Bruce? Bruce, thank you for being here. Thank you. I'm hoping that everyone else can come back on next Wednesday in the room. Is there anyone that's traveled a long distance that really needs to speak here? Seeing none, we're going to move this bill on to Wednesday. I think that's the 19th. Is that right, Sue? We're going to move this bill and we'll hear more public testimony and more Zoom testimony. And we have some amendments that we'll work on Wednesday, the 19th. Everyone have a happy Valentine's Day.